In a world increasingly defined by complex geopolitical tensions, the relationship between the United States and China remains pivotal. Recently, former President Donald Trump expressed a desire for China to play a role in resolving the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, a move that raises questions about the willingness of Chinese President Xi Jinping to engage. As both nations navigate a fraught landscape marked by trade disputes, military posturing, and diplomatic stalemate, the implications of their interactions could reverberate globally. Over the past weeks, President Trump has signaled a desire for communication with Xi, initially suggesting that a call would occur within a day, only to later indicate he was in no rush to speak. This inconsistency has cast doubt on the status of their dialogue, particularly as Xi has remained notably silent on the matter. China's foreign ministry further complicated the narrative by suggesting that no such call had taken place since Trump's inauguration, directly contradicting Trump's claims made in a recent Fox News interview. Analysts point out that Xi's reluctance to engage might stem from a strategy to project strength domestically and internationally. Jichuan Zhu, a Chinese foreign policy expert, noted that Xi's cautious approach contrasts sharply with the swift negotiations seen with other leaders such as Canada's Trudeau and Mexico's Sheinbaum, who quickly capitulated to Trump's demands. "Xi will not let that happen," Zhu explained, emphasizing that any perceived concession could undermine Xi's authority at home. Compounding the issue is the recent joint statement issued by Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, which addressed Taiwan, a territory claimed by China. The statement's reference to opposing coercion from Beijing is seen as a provocative move that could further inflame tensions. Should a conversation between Trump and Xi take place, it is likely that Trump will be pressured to soften the U.S. stance on Taiwan, which may include reducing arms sales or refraining from endorsing Taiwan's independence. Moreover, Trump's agenda includes demands for China to address its trade surplus with the U.S., curb undocumented immigration, and take a firmer stance against the sale of fentanyl precursors. He has also called for China to approve a sale of TikTok to an American company and suggested that Beijing assist in bringing an end to the war in Ukraine. However, Chinese analysts remain skeptical of Trump's promises, recalling past instances when his actions contradicted his words. Complicating matters further is the looming specter of military preparation on China's part, particularly concerning Taiwan. The U.S. security establishment is closely watching 2027, a year deemed significant for Xi as it marks the centenary of the People's Liberation Army (PLA) and the potential for increased military assertiveness regarding Taiwan. Recent revelations about advancements in the PLA's capabilities, including missile stockpiles and new amphibious assault vessels, underscore the seriousness of this concern. According to the latest U.S. Department of Defense report, China has nearly tripled its inventory of precision attack munitions, raising alarms about its ambitions. While Xi appears to be fortifying China's military capabilities, he is simultaneously engaging in economic strategies to mitigate U.S. pressure. The implications of these developments extend beyond simple trade and military transactions. They touch on the fundamental balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. As Trump and Xi navigate this intricate web of diplomacy, military preparedness, and public perception, the world watches closely. The potential for miscalculation remains high, with the stakes growing ever higher as both leaders grapple with their respective domestic and international challenges. Ultimately, the future of U.S.-China relations will likely hinge on whether these two powerful leaders can find common ground amid their profound disagreements, and whether Xi will be willing to engage with Trump in a manner that could lead to a more stable global landscape. The next moves by both leaders will undoubtedly shape not only their nations but also the geopolitical order for years to come. In a world grappling with geopolitical tensions and shifting alliances, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine has drawn the attention of global leaders seeking solutions. Recently, former U.S. President Donald Trump suggested that China should play a critical role in facilitating peace in Ukraine, raising questions about whether Chinese President Xi Jinping is willing to engage constructively in this international crisis. Trump's appeal reflects a broader desire for cooperation in addressing global issues, but it also underscores the complexities of U.S.-China relations. Trump's call for Chinese involvement comes amidst a backdrop of increasing tensions between the US and China, characterized by mutual accusations and a fierce competition for global influence. While Trump believes that China's unique position could help broker a peace deal, it remains uncertain if Xi, whose leadership style is marked by assertiveness and nationalism, would be willing to step into the diplomatic fray. The potential for Xi's involvement raises pertinent questions about China's strategic interests in Ukraine, particularly given its historical ties with Russia. Experts suggest that any attempt by Xi to mediate could be perceived as a challenge to U.S. authority in international affairs. This dynamic is further complicated by the prevailing narrative in U.S. politics, where leaders are increasingly inclined to depict China as a significant threat. A recent book by international relations scholars Van Jackson and Michael Brennis argues that this portrayal of China as an adversary not only undermines U.S. democracy but also complicates the prospects for peaceful resolutions to international conflicts. They contend that the hyper-focus on China as a rival fosters a climate of fear and jingoism which can stifle constructive dialogue. The current political climate in the U.S. compels leaders to adopt a hardline stance on China, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio labeling China as America's biggest threat during his confirmation hearing. Such rhetoric reinforces a self-fulfilling prophecy. As American officials depict China as a looming danger, Beijing is likely to reciprocate, further entrenching a cycle of hostility. This adversarial framework could hinder any possibility of collaboration on pressing global issues, including the war in Ukraine. Xi's governance, characterized by a consolidation of power and a focus on national rejuvenation, has also contributed to a more isolationist and assertive China. His administration's policies emphasize economic self-sufficiency and assertive foreign policy, particularly in regions where China has strategic interests. Given these priorities, Xi's willingness to assist in negotiating peace in Ukraine could be contingent upon whether such involvement aligns with China's broader geopolitical ambitions. As the conflict in Ukraine continues to evolve, the prospect of Chinese involvement remains uncertain. Should Xi Jinping choose to engage in the peace process, it could signal a significant shift in China's approach to international diplomacy, potentially easing tensions with the West. However, such a move would require careful navigation of complex domestic and international landscapes, as well as a re-evaluation of the current narratives framing U.S.-China relations. In conclusion, the interplay between U.S. and Chinese interests in the context of the Ukraine conflict illustrates the intricate dynamics of modern geopolitics. While Trump's call for China to play a role in peace negotiations reflects a desire for cooperation, the realities of international relations, particularly the entrenched views of both nations, pose significant obstacles. As the situation unfolds, the world will be watching to see whether Xi Jinping is willing to seize this opportunity to reshape China's role on the global stage, or if he will continue to prioritize a more confrontational stance. The outcome could have lasting implications not just for Ukraine but for the future of international diplomacy and global stability. As the geopolitical landscape continues to evolve, the recent economic strategies of China and the United States have set the stage for a potentially tumultuous period marked by trade wars and shifting alliances. With President Donald Trump re-entering the political arena and reasserting his aggressive trade policies, China under President Xi Jinping is adapting its approach to navigate the complexities of a second trade conflict. This new dynamic is characterized by a more cautious and calculated response from Beijing, reflecting a recognition of its current economic vulnerabilities. In early February 2025, Trump launched his latest round of tariffs, imposing a 10% levy on over $500 billion worth of Chinese goods. China's reaction was immediate but notably restrained. Rather than engaging in a tit-for-tat escalation reminiscent of the first trade war, Beijing opted for targeted retaliatory tariffs on $14 billion of American imports, focusing on commodities like coal and crude oil. This shift in strategy suggests a deliberate decision by Xi to maintain economic stability amid rising internal pressures as China's economy grapples with the aftereffects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bloomberg analysts noted that Xi's government appears unfazed by the barrage of tariffs, signaling a strategic pivot towards a more measured response. Jenny Marsh, who oversees Bloomberg's coverage of Greater China, remarked, "Xi Jinping's calm demeanor suggests he's taking a long view, recognizing the need to respond differently this time." This contrasts sharply with the chaotic exchanges of 2018, where aggressive rhetoric and rapid escalations characterized the trade relationship. The current economic landscape in China is markedly different than it was during the first trade war. The Chinese economy, once buoyed by robust domestic consumption, now faces significant challenges. With youth unemployment rates soaring and consumer spending dwindling, China's reliance on exports has intensified. Shuli Run, a Bloomberg opinion columnist, emphasized that China is in a much weaker position than it was in 2018, noting that domestic demand has shrunk, compelling the country to depend heavily on external markets for economic growth. Trump's trade policies are also evolving, with intentions to reshape the U.S. manufacturing landscape. His administration's broad-reaching ambitions signal a departure from the singular focus on China. This time, Trump is not only targeting China but aims to rebalance trade across the board, Marsh explained, highlighting the potential for a more extensive conflict involving multiple trading partners. As the situation unfolds, analysts are keenly observing how China plans to mitigate the impact of these renewed tariffs. The nation has previously sought to diversify its supply chains, shifting production to countries like Vietnam and Mexico. Moreover, China's strategic use of soft power, such as leveraging popular platforms like TikTok, may serve as a means to engage with the U.S. in a more favorable light without appearing submissive. Despite these efforts, the looming question remains whether a full-blown trade war can be averted. Experts suggest that the fragility of China's economic situation could provoke a more aggressive U.S. stance, as Trump will likely wield tariffs as a tool to protect American labor interests and assert dominance in international trade relations. In this context, the stakes are high for both nations, with the potential for widespread economic repercussions. Looking ahead, the interplay between Trump's unpredictable approach and Xi's strategic restraint will shape the future of U.S.-China relations. As both governments grapple with internal and external pressures, their responses to upcoming negotiations and evolving trade policies will be crucial. Will they find common ground? Or will the cycle of tariffs and retaliations continue unabated? The coming months will reveal whether diplomacy can prevail over economic warfare, or if both nations will become further entrenched in a conflict that could redefine global trade dynamics for years to come. In an era where information is increasingly subject to scrutiny and regulation, China has taken significant steps to tighten its grip on the dissemination of military-related content online. This move comes as part of a broader effort to enhance national security and maintain control over narratives surrounding the country's military capabilities and intentions. The implications of these new restrictions are profound, not just for domestic audiences but also for international perceptions of China's military posture. On February 12, 2025, Chinese authorities announced stringent measures aimed at regulating what can be shared online regarding military affairs. This decision reflects a growing apprehension about the potential impact of unrestricted information flow on national security and societal stability. According to experts, these measures are part of a larger trend of increasing censorship and control over various spheres of public life in China, particularly as the government seeks to mitigate risks associated with the rapid dissemination of information through social media and other digital platforms. The Foreign Ministry's spokesperson Gui Jiaquan addressed a range of concerns during a press conference that coincided with this announcement. He emphasized the importance of maintaining a secure environment for the military, stating, "We must ensure that information pertaining to our national defense capabilities is protected from external influences that may compromise our sovereignty." This sentiment underlines the delicate balance the Chinese government is trying to strike between transparency and security amid rising tensions with the West. Data from recent reports reveal that social media platforms have become battlegrounds for information warfare, with various narratives emerging about China's military activities in the South China Sea and its growing influence in the Asia-Pacific region. The government's response to these developments has been characterized by a tightening of controls over online discourse, which critics argue stifles free expression and limits public engagement on critical issues. Moreover, the timing of these regulations coincides with heightened geopolitical tensions, particularly surrounding Taiwan. The U.S. Navy recently conducted operations in the Taiwan Strait, a move that has provoked strong reactions from Beijing. Wei Jiaquan reiterated China's stance, asserting that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory, framing U.S. military presence in the region as a challenge to China's sovereignty. This rhetoric not only serves to bolster domestic support for government policies but also signals to international observers the lengths to which China is willing to go to assert its territorial claims. The implications of these online restrictions extend beyond China's borders. As the world grapples with the complexities of military transparency and accountability, China's approach may serve as a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of information control. An increasingly insular narrative may hinder constructive dialogue and exacerbate misunderstandings between nations, particularly in a time when global cooperation is essential for addressing shared challenges. Looking ahead, it is evident that China's tightening of online military discourse will continue to shape both domestic and international landscapes. As the government navigates the dual imperatives of security and information control, observers will be watching closely for how these policies evolve and what they mean for China's role in the global arena. The increasing difficulty in obtaining credible information about China's military activities may lead to greater speculation and anxiety among international stakeholders, underscoring the need for open channels of communication in an increasingly complex geopolitical environment. In a world increasingly characterized by geopolitical maneuvering, China's recent activities illustrate a multifaceted approach to its international relations, particularly through what some are calling moon diplomacy. This term encapsulates the growing trend of nations leveraging space exploration and technological collaboration to strengthen diplomatic ties. China's advancements in space technology, exemplified by its lunar missions and subsequent offerings of lunar soil samples to countries like Japan, signify its ambition to assert itself as a leading power in space. China's lunar diplomacy is not merely about scientific cooperation but is also a strategic move to enhance its global standing and influence. The nation has made significant strides in its space program, recently launching a successful mission to the moon and returning with samples that are now being shared with selected partners. We view our lunar samples not just as a scientific asset but as a means to foster cooperation and mutual growth, said a representative from the Chinese Space Agency. By presenting these samples as gifts to other nations, China is crafting a narrative of goodwill while simultaneously positioning itself as a leader in space exploration. Meanwhile, tensions in the Asia-Pacific region have escalated alongside these diplomatic overtures. The ongoing territorial disputes in the South China Sea and the recent patrols by Chinese Coast Guard vessels near the contested Diaoyu Islands have drawn sharp protests from Japan. Following the removal of a controversial buoy by China, Japanese officials characterized the Coast Guard's actions as a violation of international law. Yoshimasa Hayashi, Japan's chief cabinet secretary, expressed serious concerns, stating, "We will do our utmost in carrying out warning and surveillance activities and respond to China in a calm yet resolute manner." This situation underscores the delicate balance China must maintain as it pursues its diplomatic strategies amid rising tensions with its neighbors. In addition to its lunar diplomacy and maritime disputes, China is also making headlines with its ambitious hydropower projects in Tibet. The construction of a megadam on the Yarlung-Tsangpa River has sparked significant controversy, particularly from India, which relies heavily on the river's flow for its water supply. Chinese authorities have touted the dam as a people-centric project aimed at boosting local economies and addressing energy demands. However, India's response has been one of caution, emphasizing the potential environmental and geopolitical ramifications of such a massive undertaking. Altering the river's flow could disrupt vital water access for agriculture and drinking, an Indian official stated, highlighting the broader implications for regional water security. As China navigates these complex issues, it faces the challenge of balancing its domestic ambitions with the international ramifications of its actions. The intertwining of technological progress, environmental considerations, and diplomatic relations presents a multifaceted challenge for the nation. Analysts suggest that successful navigation of these waters may hinge on China's ability to foster dialogue and cooperation, particularly in light of the growing securitization of water resources amidst climate change concerns. Looking ahead, the trajectory of China's moon diplomacy, maritime activities, and hydropower projects will significantly impact its relationships with neighboring countries and the broader international community. As nations grapple with the realities of geopolitical competition, the question remains: will China be able to transform its ambitious strategies into lasting partnerships, or will it find itself at odds with those who view its actions with suspicion? The coming months will likely reveal more about the effectiveness of China's approach and its implications for global diplomacy in the 21st century.